Now, if Obamacare was demonstrated to double your probability of dying in the hospital, what do you think conservatives would say? Let's do away with it. If going to public school doubled your probability of committing suicide, oh, well, let's just do private schools. Just anything except maybe having guns around. Well, this new study, researchers at the University of California at San Francisco just did a study of 15 different studies and concluded. I'll just read from the story. Benita Matilda wrote this. This is from Science World Report. And she wrote, researchers at the University of California, San Francisco claim that people who have easy access to guns are 2 times more likely to commit suicide or to be murdered. 100% more likely. Well, let's ask Neil McCabe what he thinks about that. Conservative commentator, editor of the Guns and Patriots newsletter, neilwmccabe.com is his website. Neil, welcome back to the program.
Hey, glad to be with you, Tom. I know when you said a study of studies, that's almost like grant writers' porn to have a study of studies. That's amazing.
All 15 studies came essentially to this conclusion. There were slight variations in their methodology or in their statistics, but you look over 15 different studies on the availability. Basically, what they're saying is that if you've got a gun in the house, you're twice as likely to either use it for homicide or suicide than if you don't, or to commit homicide or suicide than if you don't have a gun in the house. That's pretty startling.
Well, did the study talk about those people who would be murdered? Because obviously, a lot of people have firearms.
It doesn't matter whose gun it is.
In danger.
Doesn't matter whose gun it is.
Well, I mean,
as you know, every single day, children in this country die
because they feel in danger, and the fact that somebody actually succeeds in killing them is evidence that their life was in danger.
If what you're suggesting is that, for example, abused spouses, typically women, but sometimes husbands, that abused spouses go out and get guns to protect themselves, and their abusive spouses then use the guns against them. You and I both know the statistics are overwhelmingly on the other side. That is, that the abusers are the ones who have the guns when those guns get used.
Well, be that as it may, I have no problem with if a spouse is feeling abused and they feel that their life is in danger. I would recommend, if they feel comfortable with it, I would encourage them to have a gun to protect themselves.
And their abusive spouse will get that gun and kill them.
Well, I mean, we have.
Why would you encourage that?
We have no control over that. Of course, with suicides, it's actually something that I dealt with when I was in Iraq. Dealing as a combat historian, I had the chance to interview people who were involved in the problem of military suicides, and it just so happens that one of the tragedies of having, a firearm is that, if someone has a suicidal gesture, and in many cases, people aren't making sincere attempts to commit suicide. They're creating a situation as they're sort of last reaching out for help. But unlike an overdose or a hanging that you've arranged, at the same time that your wife comes back from the store, there's no margin of error. Most attempts of suicide with a firearm are successful, and I think that's sort of the nature of the beast, as is jumping off a bridge or jumping in front of a bus.
Except that very few people do those things because those are viewed as, gory and awful, whereas guns are designed to kill. So if you're using a gun in the way that it's designed and one points it at oneself, it will cause death. Aren't you making my point right now, Neil?
Well, what I'm trying to say, Tom, is I'm trying to approach this, just sort of ad hoc, objectively, as an American who's concerned about other Americans.
Right.
And it is a realistic problem that when people make these sort of gestures, the gesture is unfortunately too successful with firearms.
Right.
At the same time, predicting suicide or suicide prevention is a very fuzzy science, and it's certainly not justification to disarm Americans from a right that's protected in the Constitution.
Well, we have we can argue whether or not that's a right protected in the Constitution. That's a whole different discussion. But we have the example of Australia. In 1996, Australia, basically the entire country, after one of these mass shootings, it was sort of like their version of Newtown, the entire country said, okay, that's it, screw it. And now in Australia, if you want to have a gun, you've got to have actually a reason to have a gun. Now, that reason can be that you're a hunter, or that you're a sports shooter, or that you are you're in law enforcement, or that you carry large amounts of money or something like that. But you have to have a reason, and you have to have a permit. And hundreds of thousands of guns were turned in. And what has happened since 1996? It's been 15 years now, and the suicide rate has gone down. And the homicide rate has gone down, and they haven't had a mass shooting since then.
But I would be very careful with suicide statistics, Tom, because as you know, there is still there's a lot of shame, and there's a lot of sort of fiddling in the middle, because making sure that a family gets an insurance claim. So a lot of times a suicide will be ruled an accident or something like that, and certainly in the military, there are suicides that are portrayed to the family or recorded as a combat death or something.
That may well be, but how can you not look at the numbers out of Australia and say...
My point with Australia, Tom, is that so it's fairly obvious if someone is found with a gun in their hand and they're dead, what happened. But if someone's taking pills or doing something else that caused the suicide, it's less obvious and it's more susceptible.
But in Australia,
to the fudging of the statistics.
Both suicide by gun went down.
Would be fudged.
Both suicide by gun went down and suicides went down. That was actually one of the studies that was part of these 15 studies.
Well, suicide. Obviously, violence by guns would go down, but the murder rate go down? Are people killing less time?
Yes.
They're killing. The homicide is down.
Homicide is down and suicides are down. Although suicides, I think, are the is the one that I'm most fascinated by. But yes, homicide and suicide.
I'd have to look to see how they've done that, because what you're suggesting is that there's actually been a change in human nature.
No, I don't think it's this is the exact same thing that you were just talking about in Iraq. If you can easily grab a gun and you have an impulse towards suicide, then you're more likely to be successful in your suicide. If you can easily grab a gun and you have an impulse toward assaulting someone and you assault them with a gun instead of a baseball bat, they're more likely to die.
Well, I'm telling you right now,
or your fist.
Where I'm standing, if I had the impulse to kill someone and I didn't have a gun, I'm looking around this room right now, and there are things I could do to kill somebody.
No, but look at this guy in the movie theater last week who killed the guy who threw popcorn at him in the movie theater, the guy who was texting. If that guy hadn't had a gun, if he had just gone over and gotten in a fist fight with the guy would still be alive.
Well, that very well could be true. But
I think it almost certainly is true. So isn't there an argument for only, but, in this case, this guy was a retired cop, so you could argue that he had at least a right or a reason to have a gun. Well, actually, I don't think he had a reason to be a gun.
Well, no, I don't know if a retired cop has a reason to, but in and of the fact that every American should be able to carry a weapon, but certainly if he's trained to use a knife, certainly not.
Why? Slavery is an anachronism. We took it out of the Constitution. Isn't it time to take guns out of the Constitution and say this is an anachronism too?
Well, I would welcome you taking that to a convention or getting it passed through the necessary process, Tom.
Yeah, well, yeah. Good luck with that, right?
Well,
Neil McCabe, especially with the NRA out there. Neil McCabe, neilwmccabe.com is his website. Neil, thanks for dropping by.
Nice to be with you, Tom. Take care.
Always nice having a thoughtful conversation. We'll be right back. It's 15 minutes past the hour.